Welcome back, everyone, to MOAA's Advocacy Update. I'm Cory, this is Jen from our Government Relations team, and today we're going to talk about the conferee letter that MOAA just sent to the House and Senate in regards to this year's NDAA. So before we jump into the letter, Jen, can you kind of tell us a little bit about the process and why we sent this letter?
Absolutely. So the National Defense Authorization Act is something that authorizes programs and changes for the military services each year. And so what's important is that the House comes up with their version, and the Senate comes up with their version, but ultimately only one version is published each year.
There can be only one.
Right. And so they have to conference, and there's obviously the leadership in the HASC and SASC, in the Armed Service Committees.
Right.
But they will appoint conferees, which are those people that are going to sit down at the table and really work through the provisions that are different in each bill and try to see how they can come together on a one final bill.
Okay, and what does MOAA do to try to influence that process?
So each year we send, as part of the military coalition, but also on our own, we send a letter stating hey, thank you so much for including these things, but also we want to make sure that we put special emphasis on a couple other provisions that we'd really like to see in the final version. And so we've got our letter here because we want to share a little bit more about what we're talking about. And so to kick it off, we always start with a thank you because we know the job is hard.
Right.
And so this year we're thanking them for including a pharmacy network report, which was part of our Advocacy and Action campaign in the spring. We know there were changes to the pharmacy network access that really impacted a small percentage of beneficiaries, but those beneficiaries are the ones that need this the most. And so this is just a study. And we're just really happy to see that was included.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we have advocated hard for as part of our Advocacy and Action campaign. So it's good to see MOAA's efforts earlier this year paying off. Another place where we saw that was with the BAH Restoration Act. So this is something that we raised awareness about the challenges to BAH not being 100%. It's only at 95 right now, and really outlining the impact that had on our junior enlisted especially. So we don't see the full restoration in there, but we do see a 1% increase, absorption, they call it in the NDAA. So it's another area where we see our efforts paying off.
Excellent. All right, well, let's talk. And one of our bigger priorities this year is to ensure that service members are not facing the financial challenges that come with wearing the uniform. So we've talked a little bit about this in the past, but let's dig into the pay table reform for junior enlisted.
Right. So what we've seen just across the board with the pandemic and all the challenges of service life is that while we've had steady pay increases over the past several years, we see our junior enlisted are still struggling. We see them going to having challenges with food insecurity, and right now we're just faced with a recruiting crisis. And part of the fix that we believe needs to be made is looking at that pay table reform, right, like you mentioned. So both the appropriations, so funding the government, and this year's NDAA have pay table reform on the House side for junior enlisted. And what this will do is see up to a 30% increase. And this is something that we support because ultimately when you take care of the troops, you're taking care of the entire force.
Right, and that's something from the Quality of Life panel that's come up and also will be addressed by the QRMC, which is the Quadrennial Review of Military Compensation.
Bingo.
Nailed it. Okay, well, on that same topic of making sure that military families are financially secure, we understand that pay table reform is going to take a heavy lift. So one of the things we want to do as a kind of a Band-Aid, for lack of a better word, is to improve the basic needs allowance. What this provision would do is make sure that BAH is not calculated into the gross household income, which would essentially make more service members eligible. And with the with the high cost of housing just nationwide, not even in those high cost of living areas, that's going to be really important.
Right, and I mean, that's what we heard time and time again. We were both out at Tailhook representing MOAA at the conference there, and everybody we talked to was pretty much exclusively officers, was talking about the challenges their troops were facing. And that sounds like that would be an important fix to make sure they're being taken care of.
Definitely.
One of the other provisions that I'm excited to see in the House version is an adjustment to the family separation allowance. So this is something that hasn't been touched in 2 decades. So it's been at $250 for years, and what the House calls for is an increase to $400 a month. And this is anytime somebody's separated from their family for more than 30 days.
And why is that important?
Because there's so many like just little costs that come up when you don't have your partner there to help out with just everyday chores, everyday life.
Yeah, because you can't exactly buy milk for one, and you can't buy eggs. You're getting a carton of eggs,
Right,
no
exactly.
matter what.
There's babysitting, all these little things that you
Yeah.
can't do when somebody is, when your partner's not around. It adds up, especially when you have kids around.
Speaking of babysitting, childcare is the next thing that we are really excited about in the House version. There is a provision to ensure that all DoD childcare employees who have children in the child care system do not pay anything for that first child, and that it would be a tiered fee structure. So no fee at all for that first child, 50% for the second child, and then scaled down that way. And with the provider shortage and the issues with military spouse unemployment, this could actually be one of those 2 birds with 1 stone situation.
Your transition was really good, but I don't have as clever of a one. So another MOAA effort that we did see included in this is our efforts on Arlington National Cemetery and really making sure that there's a way ahead on this. So we see a report language included to actually begin the process of thinking through what that future looks like, because eventually it's going to run out of space. And now's the time to begin thinking about that and coming up with a plan, not when we're at capacity. So we're excited to see this addressed in the NDAA as well. And we do want to see it, and because it's in report language, that means it's in, and we're going to have something to move the ball forward on this.
And quit kicking the can down the road.
Exactly.
Okay, well, hopefully we'll come to a solution. And then the last thing in the letter is the retained skilled veterans. But when a military service member retires, they can't immediately transition to certain jobs in the federal government. And so what the Retained Skilled Veterans Act would do is ensure that those service members were eligible to apply for certain jobs that they're not currently eligible to apply for. And so we're excited to see that in the House version and hope that the Senate can come to terms and it can be included in the final. Yeah.
That's exciting.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us for another advocacy update. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.